Got 20 seconds. Come on, Amanda, go.
Keep moving, keep moving, keep moving. Good. Get those knees up. Explode. Good. Explode. Let's go. Up.
Rock forward. Let's go. One more. Go.
You are listening to the Fight Strength Podcast with your hosts, Phil Daru and Jason Burgos.
What is going on, my fighting and fitness aficionados? Fight Strength Podcast is back with episode 28 to start off 2018. I am Jason Burgos, senior editor for MMAJunkie.com, and of course, I am here with the strength training plotter and schemer who helps to build the bodies of many stars at American Top Team. That is Phil Daru. Phil, what is going on in the world of strength training, seminars, templates, entrepreneurship, business dominance? What is going on?
Well, just like every other day, it's hectic and crucial that we get everything done, but it's a nonstop grind, and I'm obviously ready and able to do that. But at some points, I do get tired. You know what? We don't get tired. We just get fatigued. That's all. I'm just saying that. But right now, I feel good. I'm not even fatigued or tired. I'm ready to go.
You've been getting good sleep lately. I'm happy for you. I'm proud of you that you're finally getting some sleep. That's fantastic.
Yeah, somebody told me that was a good thing to do.
It is. I mean, it's an age-old thing. Was it Tony Ricci? Maybe it's him. You know, he's been around a long time. He's got a lot of experience. It might be him.
Yeah, the guy's kind of smart, I think.
Yeah. That whole master's double doctorate thing, that'll get you. I mean, so what's going on? I know you got some seminar stuff going on. You got some template stuff. You're doing some traveling as always. What should people look out for so they can get some big-time Daru knowledge bombs on the horizon soon?
Yeah, sure. So we got a bunch of projects coming out. February 3rd, I'll be in Atlanta at ATT Atlanta. Also going over, just going over a bunch of like my modalities, techniques. We'll also be talking about periodization and program design for MMA, strength and conditioning and physical preparation. Also, I'll be doing some type of a clinic. We'll be doing some workouts, things like that. I'll be going over maybe either, my glute hip activation series and also doing a lactic conditioning circuit with everybody that comes out to Atlanta. And then after that, definitely going back to Russia in March. And then in April, me, PJ Nestler, and Dan Gardner are teaming up to do an engineering combat athlete seminar in LA. And we're looking towards getting the new muscle farm facility out there. So that's going to be
nice.
Good.
Very nice.
Yeah. So hopefully we get that. And then probably in the next couple weeks, we'll be putting out, all the details for that. As far as my, I have all my program templates now on my website, darustrong.com. So if you're looking to purchase one of those, go ahead. And if you do decide to purchase, I will give you a 1-hour coaching call that we can go over all details and any questions that you have from the template itself. So just doing that. And then, obviously from there, I have the Poland seminars coming up and also have my own powerlifting meet at the end of February. So getting ready for a lot of things here.
Is there any chance, what's the date again that you're going to be in Atlanta?
February 3rd.
Okay, good. So a win, lose, or draw. Is there any chance you can holler at a guy named Douglas Lima to get him on the show? I would love to talk to that guy.
Yeah, we can get that. We can make that happen. If any fans or any listeners on the show are fans of Lima and want to hear it, man, just shoot me a DM or email, Fight Strength Podcast at Gmail, and we'll make it happen. But for sure, I can ask him, and I don't see it being a problem.
Oh, that'd be awesome, especially if he beats Rory McDonald. Oh my God, he'd be awesome to have on. I like that guy. That guy's an amazing fighter. But on the show this week, we'll have the pleasure of talking with one of the best and busiest coaches in the MMA game today, and MMAJunkie Coach of the Year honoree Mike Brown. I mean, Phil, do you see any comparisons in your career as a coach at ATT to Mike Brown's? Because as you both have made transitions from fighters into training as coaches. I mean, there's some interesting similarities between both of your careers of late.
Well, let's not call it similarities because he was a world champion.
You were a fighter's a fighter. Come on.
Yeah. Well, in all actuality, Mike has a good he has a very strategic approach to getting fighters ready for fights, and I do appreciate that from my side and my point of view. I do the same. He studies constantly. He's a student of the game. He loves the fight game. He watches MMA constantly. He's also a fan of the sport. But also, like him, as of me, even though like I said, he's been at the highest level and competed at the highest level. Him having that real world knowledge and being in the game and having that experience as a fighter, cutting weight and going through the processes of going in there and competing. It's a good thing for these fighters to actually, and they look up to him too. They know that who he is. They know that Mike Brown. They know that Mike Brown name. So all the new guys and all the young up and coming prospects, I see it in their face when they see him, and it's like they definitely need to get into his classes and try to get some type of knowledge and coaching from him at any point in time in their career. So it's cool.
Yeah, I'm excited to talk to Mike. I mean, as a fan, when I really first started getting into it was like around, 05, 06, 07, and I became a big fan of his. I mean, he knocked out Uriah Faber, who didn't like that at the time, unless you're a fan of the California Kid, and he had the amazing, gigantic eagle tattoo in the chest. Who's gonna fuck with a guy with that tattoo and power in both hands? I mean, that guy was awesome. I mean, unbelievable. I mean, we will get to him in our final segment of the show, but he isn't the first trainer of champions we've had on. I mean, be sure to check out all of our previous episodes with other coaching greats like Dean Thomas, Ray Longo, on our pages on iTunes, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Player FM, SoundCloud, and Google Play Music, and of course on my YouTube page. You can always look up there too. But let's move on to the traditional weekly Ask Daru segment. Now, I had a few questions I wanted to ask you from a point of view as a fan, journalist. The first one is, when you are preparing a fighter for weight cutting, do the techniques differ at all between men and women, considering their biological differences?
Yeah, that's a good question. The protocol remains the same, but you do also have to take into account that female fighters tend, and this is general, female fighters tend to hold on to a bit more water. It is harder for them to actually lose the water weight accordingly, especially because guys have more muscle mass, things like that. But I primarily would like my female fighters to walk around at a relatively easier weight cut weight. So around, instead of being maybe 20 pounds out for a male, I would say around 12 to at the most 15 pounds out for a female, and that's on the high end for sure. So a week before the fight, our 7-day protocol, we really want them around 8 pounds out at the most, and then the day of the fight, they should be no more than 2 to 3 pounds out. That's about it. So that's primarily what it comes down to. We'll be going over more of that in me and Tony Ricci's ebook coming out. We're probably going to be doing. He's telling me that he wants to do around. Let me see how many pages this is going to be, because it's going to be a lot.
It's going to be like War and Peace.
Yeah. So I mean, 40 pages is
not bad.
A lot. It's a lot for an ebook though, for sure. But we're going to give out, and it's no fluff, so it's a lot of content. But yeah, I would say definitely make sure that the female fighters are walking around a little bit more towards their fight weight instead of being 20, 30 pounds out. You don't want to have that go down, especially if they're on their cycle and things like that. I don't want to get too involved with that. But as far as that goes, I don't want to say, go into deep detail, but you definitely want to make sure you take into account that, because that's going to be hard to actually cut that weight when you're on that. So, those are the main things that we look at from that point of view.
Yeah, I mean, and it just makes it all the more like, wow, for certain fighters like Valerie Letourneau that had to cut all the way down to freaking 115, and that's not at all normal weight, considering all the things you mentioned, with a woman carries more water and all this stuff. I'm not a fan of some of the divisions in women's MMA, just because there's not enough depth, but it makes it all the more great that there are more divisions, so the women don't have to go through an even harder difficulty of cutting weight, because there's a lack of divisions and a lack of weight classes. But I mean, moving on from that, you have read many books, especially since perfect transition. You mentioned the ebook you and Tony Ricci are working on, to broaden your knowledge on your field for your strength coach, for young strength coaches out there, or athletes wanting to have a deeper understanding of their bodies and improving them. What are the 3 books these individuals must, with the caps, MUST caps, must read, and why?
I'm going to do you one better. I'm going to give you 5 books.
Oh, you hear that? You're getting 5 instead of 3. Bam! Drop it on them.
So I've already spoken about super training from Burgos and Mel Sif. So that's one thing that you want to go. But that's a dense read right there. So you might want to make sure that you have your Webster's dictionary out to understand what the hell they're talking about. From there, I would say Scientific Principles of Strength Training by Renaissance Periodization is a good book for just learning how to properly periodize a program in general. It's somewhat more towards powerlifting, but you can get a general feel for how to actually put together a program from a physical preparation standpoint. And then the next one would be like pretty much the end all be all, which is Science and Practice of Strength Training by Zaskorsky. He's another, a Russian strength coach there. And then Basic Physics. You have to make sure that you understand basic physics, biomechanics, and your anatomy. If you understand that, then you can actually formulate a process to actually help somebody. But you have to know those basics first. And then the last one for general health and also making sure you're staying safe and for prehab or rehab purposes, Ultimate Back Fitness and Performance by Dr. Stuart McGill. If you have any back problems whatsoever, if you have any weaknesses and you have any tightness in your lower lumbar, definitely check out that book by Stuart McGill. He's a spine biomechanic or spine specialist, I should say. Let's put it like that. From Canada, and definitely he knows all about backs, which is awesome. And from a general perspective, we're getting under heavy weights. You need to have a strong core and a strong back, and this is definitely something that could help you.
I mean, and just to give him a little bit more, are there even any, previous guests you just want to throw out there? Anybody, even YouTube videos for the people that maybe don't have enough attention span to want to read a book and they rather get the visual, the video? Are there any great people they should look up, be it on YouTube or some websites that are fantastic sources for building strength training repertoire?
Well, I mean, first and foremost, the one that comes to mind is Louis Simmons, Westside Barbell. Definitely want to check him out and his conjugate method. I mean, he has the strongest gym in the world. Let's put it like that. So obviously he's doing something right if he's producing this amount of strength athletes and at the highest level with so many records being broke. Then from there, I would say Matt Winning, just a wealth of knowledge. He has a master's in biomechanics, I believe. And also he's working a lot with tactical force training and things like that. But he's also a world record holder powerlifter, so he knows how to be strong and teach strength. So from there, and then who else? Let me see. From a YouTube perspective, I mean, as far as who we had on the show,
other than Phil Daru, of course.
Yeah. I'm not gonna be selfish on this one. Trust me. I mean, definitely. Obviously, I would say PJ Nestler. Dr. Corey Peacock.
Yeah.
These guys, they're colleagues of mine, but I truly respect what they do. And I also have a good announcement coming soon. I'm not going to say what we're doing, but me and Corey and Algeria are doing something big. Doing something big in the summertime. So be on the lookout for that.
All right, thank you so much for your answers. This is just a quick disclaimer for everybody listening. Our interview with Mike Brown's recorded in advance, so there's a little bit of issues. There's some issues with the audio, but stick with it. We apologize. There's fantastic stuff he's going to throw to you. Skype is a pain in the ass. If anybody out there has a podcast recording history, they know it, but give it a listen, and here it is. On to our guest. He's one of the best featherweight fighters ever. Many years ago, when I first became a fan of the sport, he was one of my favorites because he warmed my heart when he put a second divot in Uriah Faber's chin en route to winning the WEC 145-pound title. I thank you for that. It was a great moment in my fandom. But not only is he one of the best fighters to have ever been in the sport in the last 15 years, he has now transitioned into being one of the very best coaches. Proof of this is his recent selection by MMAJunkie as their 2017 Coach of the Year. He's a top coach working with the likes of Joanna Jędrzejczyk, Amanda Nunes, Dustin Poirier, Santiago Ponzinibbio, Kyoji Hiraguchi, who did big things in Rising over the last few weeks, and Jorge Masvidal at American Top Team in Florida. And he is the one and only Mike Brown. Mike, thank you so much for coming on the show with us this week.
Great introduction. That was amazing. Yeah, thanks for having me on. This is cool.
Mike, he does a, but so first of all, I want to thank you also for coming on. You know, as a I guess I could say a colleague or a co-worker in a sense. Thank you for coming on. But I wanted to ask, what was your first experience as a coach, and how different was it for you to transition into the coaching world, being a fighter and a competitor before?
Well, I started coaching kind of part-time after I had a second neck surgery in 2011. I had a cervical fusion, and that meant I was going to be out for a while. I was going to be out for, I don't remember how long, maybe 6 months or something. So at that time, I started taking on a coaching role at American Top Team because I couldn't train full-time anymore. And then from there, I still ended up fighting one more time, and the fight didn't go well, and then I just switched over to coaching full-time from there.
Awesome. Yeah, I remember coming down when I used to train there, when I was fighting, and seeing you start to run the practices, and that was great to see, man. Just because of just being a veteran in the sport and knowing the sport all around and being at such a high level was awesome to see. But can you talk a little bit about the formulation of the fight camps and what your steps are going into structuring a camp for a fighter to be ready to go in and dominate?
Sorry about that.
What was that?
Well, I mean, well, I got three dogs, and that's one of my. That was JoJo. He's on alert. Always on alert. Well, each fighter is very, is an individual, and they're all very different, and each fighter, has a different, goals and workloads that they can handle. It's kind of a case-by-case situation, and you know how it is, and each of them work with a bunch of other coaches, and they also, they all maybe have a different strength conditioning coach. Some work, or probably most of them work with you. Some of them work off-site, but the majority, I think, you're working with. And then, then we also split it up to see kind of who's going to be in charge of their striking, their striking coach, who's going to work with the wrestling. And, we kind of just divvied up who else we're going to bring in on the camp. But it's each one is very different, I'd say.
Yeah, for sure. That makes sense. That's the same thing as we go forward. Everybody is an individual, and we have to make sure that we are, it's subjective of how our approaches are as coaches. And Mike does a great job. Let me just attest to this. Like, he understands the process of what needs to go down for each individual fighter and their strengths and weaknesses, and how to correlate a game plan for them to be successful. So definitely Mike Brown is the man. I'm not going to lie. You know what I'm saying? We've I guess collaborated, you could say, with a bunch of other fighters at American Top Team. So I am thankful for having a guy like that on my team. So it's good.
It's interesting because you'll have a guy like for instance a Kyoji Horiguchi who's a guy who can. This kid will train like 3 times a day consistently. Wow. That's not a normal schedule for most people. Most people can't handle that kind of workload. Their body will break down and they'll be a mess. I mean, I know for one, myself could never handle the amount of work this guy handles, and not just here and there. It's on a consistent basis. The guy will run. He'll get up and he'll run. I don't know, 3 to 5 miles. Then he'll do like a kind of like a beginner style jiu-jitsu class, and then spar all at noontime. So he's hitting his 3rd practice sometimes at noontime, and this is not a rare thing for him.
Just like I'm sure you had. Oh yeah, go Phil.
Well, speaking about Kyoji, I was just gonna say, man, is that half the time I have to make sure that I'm pulling him away from training because you'll catch him doing stuff like extra. Like even with me, usually we pull Kyoji out of strength conditioning because he's just a physical specimen, like an athlete in general. But after my training, and I'll see him go like run, 10 miles, and I'm like, what are you doing, man? You gotta find time to rest, and Mike does that too. Mike will have to pull him off and stuff like that. So it's fun. What's that?
Genetic freak.
Yeah, for sure, man.
Yeah.
Just like I'm sure you have professional influences in your fighting career, are there any coaches and trainers that you have taken cues from in your techniques as a coach now?
I mean, of course, there's been many. You know, you're kind of. I mean, I thought this way when I was a fighter. Also, you know, I've been influenced by many other fighters and many coaches, and I feel like I myself am kind of like a mosaic of all my past coaches. You know, you take a little piece from this coach and that coach. You know, you're kind of a product of your experiences, and I try to take, you know, the pieces that I liked or the best pieces, and or my favorite pieces, and try to make them my own. And but I've learned a lot from, you know, Cattell. I've learned a lot from Coach Howard Davis, one of the my old boxing coach from there. My old high school coach Ted Reese, Paumpa. I've learned a lot from over the years. I mean, it's a long list of coaches that have influenced me and helped me. And you know, you just take little bits and pieces, and fighters. I learned a lot from the guys also. I would say, you know, the majority of our fighters would be great coaches in most gyms around the world, or our gym. You know, most of them are that good and knowledgeable about everything from exercise science to nutrition to fighting techniques. So, you know, you can get a lot from the fighters also.
Is there a fighter right now that you'd like to give a shout out you think could be an excellent coach one day?
Well, two quickly come to mind. Thiago Alves. He's awesome, and he's actually now starting to coach at the gym, like part time. But he's also fighting, kind of like what I was doing back in the day. Starting to, when he's not in camp, with his free time, helping guys out, you know, fixing technique, running practice, doing this type of thing. He's going to be an amazing coach, just a boatload of knowledge, and has fought at the highest level and still doing it. I think also Jorge Masvidal is going to be an amazing coach. Just really like well-rounded pool of knowledge that he has from like really in depth knowledge of boxing, like Muay Thai kickboxing, wrestling, jiu-jitsu. I mean, when he gets into something, he really like, you know, dives in head first and immerses himself in it. You know, like I know, especially with like wrestling. Wrestling is not very glamorous part of our sport. It's probably the least glamorous, but maybe the toughest. You know, physically on your body is a lot of injuries. But he was the guy who, you know, really fell in love with wrestling and challenged himself all the time. He would call out the best guy in the room on a daily basis and became really close friends with Colby Covington, and they would scrap every day. You know, I mean, I think it was a really long time until George probably scored a point on him. You know, it could have been years. You know, I'm not sure, but just really strong mind and willing to throw himself in there, and now his wrestling is, you know, fantastic.
Yeah. I was curious on this. What is the process for a fighter at ATT to have you coach them? I mean, because who wouldn't want to be coached by one of the best in the world? But you are very busy with a lot of major fighters at the gym. Can a male or female fighter just go up and ask at the gym, "Hey, Mike, can you coach me?" Is there a pecking order, and do they work their way up to you, sort of like a video game boss? I mean, do you scout the gym a bit? And how does that work? That somebody can get the chance to have you coach them?
Well, no, we have a team of coaches, all really good coaches, and I mean, we all work together. We all, I mean, athletes I work with also work with the other coaches too. They don't work exclusively with me. So I just happen to corner a lot. So I'm in a lot of corners. So sometimes I get maybe more credit than some of the other guys do because of that, but because I'm seen in the corner. But all the coaches are working with these athletes, and to different degrees. That's going to depend on, personality and how you mesh or relate to the athlete. I mean, that's going to, vary quite a bit. Some people, like a coach who's maybe a little more easygoing. Some liked a strict coach who's going to really keep them in line. But it's really a team effort, each of the athletes. It's not like any of the athletes I work with me exclusively.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, Mike, man, we have a lot of like young and up and coming fighters that listen to the podcast. Let them know exactly, and you can kind of verify it, but what in your mind are the greatest assets a fighter can have to be successful in a sport like mixed martial arts?
I think the two most important two most important attributes a fighter can have that will pretty much guarantee success is one, I think, good conditioning, and two, mental toughness. If an athlete has those two things, I predict they're going to go very far, top 10, top 5, or championship level. I think that's more important than speed, more important than power. I think endurance and mental toughness will get you so far. I think speed and power can win you fights. Endurance and mental toughness will win you championships. And along with that goes work ethic. I think that part of mental toughness is having a good work ethic. You have to be driven. You have to have the desire. You have to work a lot. And I mean, this guy, like a good example is Kyoji. This guy puts in just crazy volume. I mean, his whole life. I mean, most of the athletes are. It's at this level, the guys or girls that are, world champions or in the top 10 are usually pretty obsessed with it. It's their life. That's all they think about. That's all they want. That's all they care about. There's just so many people doing it now. The competition is so high. You kind of have to have that mindset.
Yeah, for sure.
Now, the sport is one that really matured and became legitimate in the 21st century, and that short amount of time is constantly evolving in terms of training, weight cutting, nutrition. You have been around the sport in its highest levels as a fighter since 2001, and now as a coach for the last bunch of years. What are some of the biggest changes you have seen in fighter training from when you first started out to now? And does it make you wish you had started now, or did you enjoy them, starting in the early 2000s?
Oh, I mean, it's changed quite a bit, and it's still changing. It's always changing. But before I answer it, I would actually like to just hear what you guys think about what the most important attributes for an athlete.
Oh, Phil, you got to take that one.
A couple things. When you're
this is why Mike, our coaches, man, he's gonna go ahead and flip me and try to see what I say. But I was.
I'm just curious, it's interesting to see what people look for.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I would say mental toughness is obviously one of them. You have to have the will to want to win and will to want to train hard. Hard work ethic is obviously one. And then from a physical preparation or a physical asset, I would say definitely conditioning, but also strength being a major key, because for me, I believe that if two guys are going to go ahead and step in and both sides are equally matched as far as skill level, strength will be the defining factor in winning that fight, along with the conditioning. But strength will help that conditioning along that path. So somewhere around that realm, I would say that's what you need to focus on.
Yeah.
I mean, if I was going to have to say... Yeah, go, Mike. Yeah.
Quick story about the strength of, because I mean, talking a lot about Kyoji just because it's fresh in my mind. We just had that awesome tournament last weekend, but I got an awesome story about his dad. I met his dad, I don't know, a couple years ago, and a really little guy, smaller than Kyoji, shorter, smaller, skinny guy, right? Skinny old man. Got that haircut where he's bald, but has a little bit on the sides, like an old man haircut. Skinny guy, smoked cigarettes like a chimney, But he's, I'm wearing a t-shirt and, like my arms are kind of big. I had like a big vein in my bicep. So he doesn't speak English, but he's like, oh, and he starts grabbing my arm, and he kind of challenges me to an arm wrestling match.
Wow.
And I'm like, oh, what's this guy doing? This is, kind of joking around. I'm like half-heartedly trying. He puts me down easily. It was like left-handed, and he slams me down easily.
Wow.
Wow. It's amazing. Again, he beats me again. Then I go, all right, well, let's go right arm. I'm better right arm. And again, smash, beats me with ease, both arms. Doesn't lift weights. Never lifted weights in his life. Just crazy genetics. And used to work construction, I think, when he was younger, but hasn't done that in years. And it's crazy some of the strengths these guys have, and I just found that like pretty cool.
Well, that's the same thing like you, Mike. I mean, if somebody gets a hold of you in a grappling situation, just because you don't lift weights doesn't mean that you cannot, be strong in certain situations on the mat. So, I mean, people think that, just because you're lifting weights, you're going to be strong on the mat. It's a different type of atmosphere, different type of aspect. I mean, I know bodybuilders that you could just toss around. You know what I'm saying? So it's really different. It's a different type of strength that you have to acquire. But it makes a lot of sense. He probably had some good technique too that he utilized on you as well.
Yeah, but I think there's a genetic component to strength. Like Kyoji's freaky strong, super strong, and I found out where it came from. I'm like, it comes from this guy, his dad. I mean, of course, you got to cultivate it and lift weights and years of training to cultivate that. But it's for sure. He definitely, he scored big time in the genetics department also.
I mean, since you asked about suggestions of like what's the best assets, and I'm glad I can talk to a world-class coach, world-class strength coach. I was thinking that maybe the best assets for a young fighter would be speed and flexibility. Speed, because I mean, power is great; it's a game changer. But you have speed, you can catch people with shots and attacks that they don't see coming. It can do as much damage. And I was also, in terms of flexibility, I would wonder if that's very key to avoid injuries in such a brutal and tough sport to train in. What do you guys think?
Go ahead,
These
Mike.
are all real important things. These are all important characteristics for an athlete. But if you had to like pick two, if I had to only two that I could choose, I would choose mental toughness and conditioning. Especially over a 5-round fight. If you can just weather the storm and wear a guy out, because once a guy's tired, it's over. And that's where guys like Dustin Poirier thrives, Colby Covington. These guys have freaky gas tanks where they don't tire at the normal level of other athletes. They can get in these minute-long scrambles and come out of it barely breathing, and then they can go right back into a scramble, which it's I wish I had that, because it's that's the worst feeling in the world when you feel like you want to throw up and die and you got a guy coming after you. It's a nightmare.
Yeah, I think it's the same. As far as like with the speed and flexibility. Now there's moments that you can be actually too flexible and get injured as well. So that's a steady balance of stability and mobility and flexibility there. And then speed being a good key factor as far as, if you can, get the first punch, or if you can counter somebody quick enough. I think that'll help. But like I said, if you don't have the endurance to actually go through a full round or a full fight, especially if it's a 5-round fight, it's going to be really hard for you to actually sustain that power and that strength for that long duration. So yeah, that strength and that power needs to be conditioned enough to go for 3 to 5 minute rounds, whatever the case may be. It needs to be able to be sustained. So yeah.
One more question, Mike, and then Phil's got another one for you. I mean, are there any, and I don't want to start any issues, tampering or anything like that, but are there any fighters not affiliated with ATT you wish, you would be intrigued by working with, that you're fascinated by them, you feel maybe you can add a little something to the game? Because personally, I would love to see Mike Brown work with former opponent Jose Aldo. I think that'd be a very intriguing combination. But are there any fighters that you would love to work with?
I never really think about that too much, but we have such a giant stable right now. I'm more than busy enough. I haven't really thought too much about that. I mean, of course, Aldo's a great athlete and phenomenal fighter and has been for many years. Yeah, it would be cool to be. Of course, it would be an honor to work with him. We actually have Renan Barão now at American Top Team. An old teammate of Aldo. I find that pretty cool. And sometimes I like. I've always been a huge fan of the sport, so I get sometimes even like a little starstruck sometimes when I meet some of the older stars, that now probably some of the guys that are retired or are retiring, but that before I was really fighting were big back then. Like, for instance, now recently I've been working with Andrei Arlovsky, which is like a huge honor. Because when I was kind of coming up, this guy was UFC champion. It's really cool to be working with a guy like that. Another really cool moment I had as a coach, kind of related, was when I was with Kimbo and he fought Ken Shamrock. It was just so cool to be like, we're fighting Ken Shamrock, because I was from UFC 1 watching this guy compete forever, and then it was an exciting fight. He got taken down and almost choked out, and he got away, and then like knocked a hole in the guy's head. So it was like, it was a really cool experience, So sometimes the older generation, I'm intrigued by and a big fan of that generation.
Yeah, that's awesome. So Mike, let me ask for the listener's sake, what are some key things a young do to level? Like if he's an amateur or if he's in the regional scene, he's trying to make it to the UFC or Bellator, something like that. What are some things that he could do as far as maybe practice or just game planning that he could do to take his game to the next level?
Yeah. Well, a couple things. For me, it was always, I think it's important to making goals. Everyone knows this, right? And for me, it was always making small goals, small achievable goals, right? And that way, I never made it like I never was into really long-term goals. I never really thought too much about that. I always had short-term, and I would reach it and make another one a little more challenging. Literally when I started fighting, it was I just wanted to fight to say I did it. Then I had a fight and I was like, well, that was pretty cool. I would like to do maybe 5 of them, because then I would feel like I would be a real veteran. If I had 5 fights, that would be like a legit veteran, Yeah. And then I had 5, and then I was like, man, I'm doing okay. I think maybe I could make it into the UFC. It would be cool to say it's the UFC, and kind of just like that. I think small goals are really important.
Yeah. I do see that.
Another thing I think is really important is
a lot of No, go ahead.
No, go ahead. You broke up on me a little bit. Keep going.
Oh, yeah, no, I do see that a lot with the young fighters, man. They get into the sport just automatically thinking that they're going to make it to the UFC and they're going to be world champions. And that could be something that you can strive for, but you definitely have to set smaller goals to accomplish them to build up that confidence and keep going forward. But I see that a lot, though, with the young kids.
Yeah, and it's easier. Just, make a small goal and hit it. Then when you hit it, okay, make another one. And then the long journey, starts with a step, and that's really important. Another thing that I think is very important is, finding people that are better than you. If you're the best guy in the gym and nobody can touch you, you've outgrown your gym, in my mind. I mean, that was my mindset. I always tried to, strive and try to find people better than me.
Yeah.
I wanted to be pushed in the gym. I wanted to lose in practice, because if I was losing in practice, then I know I'm getting better.
Yeah. I'm glad you brought up goals, because it actually transitions perfectly into my next question. You've been a world champion fighter. Now you're training champions. not what is your big goal, because you said you don't really set big goals, but what are the next goals for you in your career? Like, be it in MMA or just in life, like what are the next small goals you have for yourself?
You know, as a coach, I haven't really been setting a whole lot of goals. You know, it's more of the fighter's goals. You know, I try to take care of the athletes that I'm working with and help them achieve their goals. You know, that's really what my life has become. And I really don't think too much about personal goals, honestly. Maybe I should have some, but I guess
It'd be
it's a little
nice.
different. You know,
I mean, so many.
because it's you know, it's about the fighter and what they're
Yeah,
doing. And
yeah.
go ahead.
No, not continue. 'Cause I broke up for a bit, so I thought you were finished. But not continue. Yeah, some on the fighter.
No, that was it. We got a little bit of lag here, I think, for both of us. So it's a little confusing.
Yeah, Skype's a
Sometimes
pain
on
in
the
the ass. I apologize to everybody listening. Skype is difficult at times. But I'll just go into the last question. You know, so many people know you in connection with MMA. You know, tell us some things fans may not know about you that isn't related to MMA. I mean, what's Mike Brown's personal passions? You know, what's your favorite music genre? What's your favorite movies? Like what's some interesting thing about you people do not know?
You know, what do I do? I mean, I'm really into MMA, so I watch a lot of MMA. I talk about MMA a lot. MMA is my life, pretty much. You know, I don't watch a lot of TV. I don't listen to the radio. I like podcasts. I love my dogs. I got 3 dogs. Those are like my children. And yeah, I don't know. It's pretty simple life, man. But I like comedy a lot. I go to a lot of comedy clubs. I enjoy that. But that's it, man. I'm lucky that my passion and my hobby is also my job. I'm really lucky. I'm like an MMA fanatic. You know, ever since I laid eyes on UFC, which rented UFC #2 back in like 1994, and was completely hooked, obsessed, and it like literally changed my life. And I've been just like studying it ever since, and I'm super lucky to be able to do what I love for a job. It's you know, like kind of a dream come true type of thing.
I mean, that's all the questions. Is there anything? Is there any way people can follow you, see what's coming up next? Some of the interesting things with your followers. What's your Twitter handle? You have Snapchat or Instagram, Facebook, even a website. Anything you want to promote, so anybody listening can follow you.
You can find me at Mike Brown MMA on Twitter, Instagram, and well, you did have a question earlier that I kind of got sidetracked on, but I thought was a pretty good question about a couple things that have changed in the training.
Yeah.
From,
how different it's been from when you started in 2001 to now. How much is the training of a fighter evolved in that time?
Yeah, and I think that's a good question, because there is a lot of changes, and I think, you know, a couple big ones is the intensity of the sparring has changed a lot, right? With all the information about CTE, people don't spar as reckless and as hard as they used to, as frequently as they used to. You know, it used to be really common. Like I used to spar twice a week, year round, and hard as I could, always. You know, and we did that for years. You know, and that's kind of changed. And even now, like I don't ever spar hard anymore. I'll only sometimes just kind of flow or kind of play around spar. And actually I see some value to it. You know, I feel like actually you can actually pick up techniques a little easier and a little quicker, because you can try new things without getting killed, you know? And I find that really interesting. And that is one of the major changes, you know, and another one is kind of a technique change is the amount of motion and movement now. There's a lot more footwork, and guys are moving all over the place. as opposed to 5-10 years ago. It was a lot more flat-footed, stand in front of them, traditional Western style boxing or Muay Thai style kickboxing. But now you got a lot of footwork, and those are a couple major changes that I see. But good question and cool stuff to think about.
Phil, do you want to give them your social as always? The Twitter, the Instagram, the Snapchat, because you're very popular in there, especially on Sweden, and the website.
Yeah, sure. It's DaruStrong.com, and my Twitter handler is @DaruStrong. Instagram, the same thing, and my Snapchat is DaruStrong1.
All right, that is it. Thank you so much, Mike Brown. Really appreciate a true honor as a longtime fan to get to talk to you. So thankful for you to come on the show this week with us.
No, thanks for having me on, guys. It was fun, man.
All right, I am Jason
Thanks,
Burgos.
bro. I appreciate it, bro.
I'm Jason Burgos. He is Phil Daru, the bearded wonder, the Viking Prince. That is it for this week. See you next time, everybody. Bye-bye.